Could I phish two of the most security conscientious companies? That's what we set out to discover a few weeks ago. You see, everyone says you need to train your employees to stop phishing attacks, but is training enough? Today, you'll get to see an over-my-shoulder view how I conduct social engineering attacks and how I just tested two companies that place a lot of emphasis on security and security awareness training for their employees and see, could I phish them or could I not? You'll get to see how I do reconnaissance on targets to gather absolutely as much information as I can about them as possible, how I build a dossier for each target in the engagement, how I gather information about each individual, their social media, as much information as I can about them, how I do active reconnaissance and start interacting with my targets to gain even more information about them or about their environments, the emotional triggers that I use to get the targets to take the action that I want them to take in the interaction, in that particular engagement. The methods I use to create phishing pages that look really legitimate, and how I close the loop so that even if I get them to give me their credentials, I log in an account, they have no idea anything has ever happened and they're not one bit suspicious. But before we get too far along, I need you to subscribe and hit the bell notification so that you see when I release future videos. Did you do it yet? So the backstory. So how did I end up trying to phish and social engineer two of the most security conscientious companies that I've dealt with? Let me take you back a few weeks. A few weeks ago, Donna Grindle and David Sims had me on the Help Me With HIPAA podcast. We did an interview. You can go watch on YouTube and go listen on their podcast where we talked about social engineering. I talked about my methodology as a social engineer, the methods, the tricks that I use to get employees to take an action that's not in their best interest, basically what social engineering is. It was a great podcast. We had a great discussion. And at the end of it, Donna had an idea. By the way, if you're looking for a good podcast on security topics, be sure that you check out the Help Me With HIPAA podcast. Although it has HIPAA in the name, it's about a lot more than HIPAA. You should really go check it out. Donna wanted to know, would her employees fall for phishing? Because what I talked about in the podcast was pretty advanced phishing. Spear phishing attacks that I've done for companies. So she wanted to know how vulnerable were her employees and David, since they do so much work together. So she had the idea, let's do a social engineering engagement of our two companies. I thought it was a great idea. It would be a huge challenge because I've done a lot of social engineering and I know that small companies can be harder to target than big companies, and very well trained companies like their own, because I've dealt with them in the past, are going to be even harder. So I was up for the challenge. I accepted the agreement. We hammered out a brief scope of work, what was in scope, what was out of scope, phishing, multi-factor authentication, voice solicitation, text messages, and what I could do and what I couldn't do. We were going to start dark. I had no list of employees. It was up to me to find them all. So the very first thing I want to know about these two organizations is about their emails. What email system are they using? Are they using Office 365? Are they using G Suite, etc.? And the reason being is I want to match my attacks to what they're using. If they're using G Suite, when I buy my phishing domain, I set up my phishing email accounts, I'm going to use G Suite. It has a much greater likelihood of making it straight to their inbox, past spam filters, etc. Same thing with 365. If that's what they're using, that's what I'm going to use. I've just found we get a huge delivery straight to the inbox success rate doing that. So I have the two companies, Cardin and Security First IT. I'm simply going to copy their domains. I'm going to do a MX lookup. So we come to MX lookup, MX lookup tool. Okay. And if I put in the domain Cardin HQ and I do an MX lookup, it gives me the DNS records and boom, I see they are using Google. So all my emails targeting Cardin, I'm going to use G Suite emails, Google emails, the business version. Okay, Security First IT. An MX lookup for them. And I have Barracuda Network. So this tells me they're using a Barracuda email filter, probably. So that's something to keep in mind. I still don't know which email client they're using. So I'm going to have to do some active reconnaissance. That's beyond the scope of this passive reconnaissance phase. But I do know they're using Barracuda, so that's something to be aware of. Keep in mind as I craft those phishing attacks, I need to be extra careful because they do have extra security in front of that email. Okay, next step in passive reconnaissance is seeing what else I can find. Can I find documents, email addresses, etc.? So the first thing I'm going to use is Google Dorks. And I'm just going to simply use quotation marks. I'm going to put at securityfirstit.com. And I'm looking for email addresses. That's the Google Dork I'm using. And so far, I'm not really seeing anything. I have DXX at Security First IT, or that might actually be sanitized. Oh, look at this. We've got info at securityfirstit.net. Let's check that out. Securityfirstit.net. Is this the same company? No. Usually if it's the same company, that would be redirected. But that's not going anywhere, so that's probably not them. So the next tool I'm going to use is a website called Dehashed. You do have to pay for this. It's very affordable, but I can find information about email accounts, even potentially passwords from breaches. These are dehashed breached accounts. So I'm just going to search for the domain securityfirst.com, and I've got 13 results. Not bad. Okay, so I see at, so I'll go put that in my notes. That's David's email. So I'm seeing a mixture of formats here. I have a first name, a first initial, last name, it looks like. That must be that executive assistant, so I can maybe use her as a way in. The easier the target, I can use them to pivot further. Looks like another first initial, last name. His email, tickets, bills, work, Anton plus self. Okay, so those are things. I'm going to go put all of those in my notes. Maybe I'll see which ones are still active, send some kind of email that won't set off alarm bells. Let's go back to search. Now let's do Cardin. CardinHQ.com. I have two. Okay. Both of these are. Okay, so that's Krista's email address. It looks like they're using first name. So I'm going to try that for all of those employees, put that in my notes. And that's that phase. So the next thing that I want to focus on in my passive reconnaissance is gaining information about the employees. And I typically build up my recon notes using Google Docs. And I've already got this pretty much set up, and I'll give you a quick overview of how I do this. First thing I did is I went to their website. I'm looking for information about the employees for the organization. If we go to About Us, and look, what do we have? We have their team. We have a list of the team members, and this is perfect for me. All right, so let's see a little bit about Donna Grindle. So I see that she's an ambassador for HHS, which is interesting, something to keep in the back of my mind. So I might come add this to her info. Something I can use. I can read through this about her. What does she like? She likes pirates, Jimmy Buffett. Okay, so maybe I'll copy that. I'll come over here and I'll put a likes section. Jimmy Buffett in here. Okay, I don't know her email address yet. Okay, that's what she has here. I know she's on the podcast, which is going to be a great resource. I can go listen to some articles, see what kind of tools she's talking about. Then I want to check out her LinkedIn page. I'm opening this in a new tab. Let's see what she does. She's a podcaster, speaker, consultant. She lives in Stone Mountain, Georgia. So as you can see, I added that to my notes. That's important. That can become useful later. Look at some of her recent activity. It all looks pretty professional. She's talking about business stuff for the most part. Not much personal. Okay. Next, I'm going to go look at her reviews because I can get some information from that about some of her previous clients, people she's worked with. Some of these people who have endorsed her, these might be people she's worked with, done something with. But I'm really interested in these recommendations here. CEO of Azalea Health, founder at Hometown 401k. Donna helped us upgrade our technology. Okay. We've collaborated on several projects in the health IT, privacy and security. Okay, so that's something I'm going to note. So as you can see, I marked this over here in previous clients. That's her. LinkedIn, I want to look at her Twitter. She's got that linked for us here. Again, I'm going to open this in a new tab. And I'm just looking at her social media, what is publicly available about her. And her social media goes to Cardin HIPAA, at Cardin HIPAA. So she might not have a personal account. I can't tell yet. But one thing I do is when I see a business, and I'll do this on LinkedIn as well, I'll go to Cardin. Here it doesn't matter a whole lot, but of course I'm going to look at employees, etc., about the company. Can I get some email addresses or anything from here? Not much. All right, back at Cardin, I'm going to look at followers, 272 followers. And the reason I want to look at followers in social media is a lot of times the employees follow their companies, and I can identify their personal social media handles this way. If I can know their personal social media, I can see what kind of things they like, what they're following. I can craft social engineering scenarios based on that. So we scroll through here, and I don't see a personal account. I do, however, see, again, the CEO of Azalea Health. So I know he's following her. I know that they've done business with him. So that's something I can keep in mind. I might be able to use that against him. I don't know. And I'm going to go and do the same thing for all the employees. All right, let's take a look at Carla. And just what I did for Cardin, I'm going to come do the same thing for Security First IT. I want to know who their employees are. I know we have David here, the owner. That's Anton, the co-owner. So I know those two employees. I don't know email addresses necessarily yet. All right, let's go to LinkedIn because I'm not seeing any about or anything. Contact. No, I have a phone number, which I'll take a note of that. I'll put that in my notes. Okay, 5 employees. Let's see who we find. We have a David Sims, a Thea Canis. She's an executive assistant. So that she might be kind of a gatekeeper that I can use. A Courtney A. Let's see what we can find out about her. Does she have any contact? No public contact information. I know that she went to University of NC Charlotte. Okay. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology at the University of Charlotte in 2014. Okay, so bachelor's degree, she probably graduated in 2010. So I have an age idea about her. She also has worked at a few other agencies. She was an administrative assistant at Piedmont College. Look at her certifications, some volunteer she's done. Volunteering is very important because people volunteer for things they're passionate about. If I know what you're volunteering for, you're passionate about animal shelters, environmental programs, city cleanup. I can create fishes off of that because those are your passions. Trisha's a volunteer admin assistant, animal rescue. So that can be very useful. I could come up with some kind of animal rescue email. Okay. Interest. She's interested. Let's see what she's interested in. Arnold Consulting, Security First, Freedom School Partners, mostly things she's done. CERN, Novamax, MIT. That's interesting. I still don't know her last name, so it's kind of hard to come up with an email schema. But I've got some interesting data about her, and I'm going to go put my notes in my recon document. I'm going to do this for all the employees that I can actually identify. So now I'm ready for active reconnaissance. And this is where I'm going to actually start interacting with my targets, Cardin and Security First IT, to gain more information about them. I want to see if I can find out what software they're using, what solutions they're using, anything I can find out about them. I still have to figure out who Security First IT email provider is so I can craft my attack correctly. So now I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call Security First IT. They have a gatekeeper who does sales, most likely. So if I call the sales department, I can maybe try to get some kind of pamphlet. I can maybe get some kind of sales brochure that talks about the software, the solution stack they use. And that gives me more information that I can use in my phishing. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to try to throw in some questions, see if I can figure out what email client they're using. So let's do that.
For calling Security First IT, this is
This is William. I am calling from Dozier Miller Law Group. What is your guys' process for if we're looking for a new MSP focused on security?
if you have a phone number and an email address you'd like to provide me with.
Sure. Before we talk, though, we probably will want an NDA.
Sure, yeah.
How can I get that to you?
Okay, so
Are you a Microsoft house? Just so I could just share you a link to it.
we do have Microsoft Outlook.
So I'll send you an email and I'll put our contact info in there, and I'll give you a link to that NDA also.
Great. Okay, and just so that I can provide our owners with a heads up and let them know that you're interested in speaking with them, would it be okay to have your contact information?
Yeah, I can send an email to you.
Okay, great. All right, I'll look out for that email.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So the next thing I need to do is I need to actually get some domains for my initial probing emails, some domains I can actually use. So I typically outright go buy domains I can use for phishing. Thanks to my call, I now know that Security First IT is using Office 365, so that's the email client I'm going to use. I'll typically buy domains from Google or domain.com, wherever. I like Google domains because when I buy it, I can turn off auto renew, so I can only use it, buy it for a year, and then it automatically expires and I'm done. I don't have to come back and do that. Now, when I'm coming up with a phishing domain, securityfirstit.com, first thing I'm going to do is security. I'm just going to Google a domain and see what other endings are available. Come over to all endings. I can get .net, .org, .info, .io, .us, .co. That could work because it can be easy to confuse co and com. But that still might be a pretty big giveaway. However, I do like that this is an I, because what I can do is I can change that I to an L. And when you look at that, that does not look much different, does it? That could pass pretty acceptably as securityfirstit.com. So I'm going to check if this is available. And if it is, I'm going to buy this. Now, it's not available because I already bought it. But for our purposes, this is how I come to figure out the domains. Now for Cardin, I'm going to come up with some kind of company, some kind of healthcare organization. I have an email domain already from a healthcare organization that I could use to set up a pretty convincible phish. So I'm going to use that for them. I'm going to interact with them by email because I don't want to call them because they might know my voice, given that we've done a few things together in the past. I don't really want to call them. I'm going to stick to email for them. So I found a couple email addresses. I'm going to send it to them, try to figure out who's sort of the gatekeeper for new customers, see if I get an exchange going back and forth with them. And because I know Security First, who they're using, I'm going to see if I can come up with some kind of email that can maybe get me some other email addresses. So I'm starting active recon on Cardin. Like I said, I've got this email domain, which I'm going to keep hidden for a few reasons. So my idea is I can come from the angle of a new customer. I want to cause emotion. This is something I forgot to point out previously. I want to cause emotion in my phishes. That emotion can be excitement because of a new customer. That can be fear, something's going to happen. That can be authority. I'm coming at someone from an authority perspective and they want to please that authority, be that their boss, etc. And I'm going to cause an emotion. I don't want a huge emotion. So if I rate this from a scale of 0 to 10, this emotion, I want to keep this like a 3, 4, 5. Something that sort of gets them to take the action, but not so emotion. The Nigerian prince is sending you $1 million, and they go, wait a second, that can't be real. The emotion I want to use here is a new customer. That's exciting for business to get new revenue. So I came up with this fish, basically saying that we've had a security incident that's caused our management to want to be sure that HIPAA compliance is addressed. Is that something your firm can handle? I tell them I've listened to the podcast for a few years and thought of you. I need a way to get information from them. So my idea is I can request that they sign an NDA that I'm going to share with them via Google Drive, because that's what they use, which is going to take them to a login prompt. So I wait, I get a reply, and she says she can set up a call. I don't want a call. I want email interaction. So Elizabeth tells me I need to upload the NDA form. That's bad news. I don't want to upload a form. I want a link. So I tell her I can't upload it because it's a form we use, which I've seen companies use forms online. So I give her a link to this form, which is going to take her to a landing page where Google says we need to verify your account. And as you can see, I've got Drive in the domain. I've got a secure, just to make this seem a little bit more legitimate. This is a real prompt Google will give. Took the same words. The next button takes them to a password login. So in my opinion, it's a pretty convincing fish. And then if they do it, they will be directed to a form, and that's how I close the loop. I don't leave any questions hanging. I'm going to close the loop here. They feel like they got what they went for. However, I get the email back from Elizabeth telling me they don't accept links from new unverified clients. So that's a dead end. That's a great security policy to have in place, but it's pretty much stopped me in my tracks. So I went back and did a little additional recon, and I found this post from Donna Grindle's brother. I didn't know she had a brother, but I found this post on LinkedIn, and she has a very passionate response about her brother, which this is very good for me. Passion will cause people to take actions. So my idea was to create an email that appears to come from LinkedIn with her brother sending her a message. I know she's passionate about her brother. She's interacting with a little bit on LinkedIn. And if I can send this as him sending a message, I can maybe get her to log into LinkedIn, which I could use to pivot elsewhere. I'm also going to send this to a couple other employees because some other Cardin employees interacted with this. However, I was not able to get any credentials. I did get a couple clicks, which I'm using redirects to track my clicks. So here in WordPress, I set up a unique redirect for each user I send this to. When I send the email, I'm going to copy this link and I'm going to send this to them. So each individual gets a unique link, and that tracks redirects and the IP address that it's coming from, so I can know if the person clicked on it. So I got a couple clicks, but no one fell, no one logged in. So that didn't work. So my next idea was, I know that Cardin and Security First IT work together a lot. So using my email address that I'm faking as David Sims, maybe I can send a link to Cardin's doing a referral. And I can send this to some kind of forms, and again, it's going to try to authenticate them. So I came up with this idea. So I'm sending this to Elizabeth because she's the gatekeeper, it seems, at Cardin. Coming from David, saying that Donna told me to forward this to you. Again, I'm playing on that emotion of authority, and I'm sending this link. She said they don't take links from non-trusted people, but maybe she'll accept this one. But in the end, I got no clicks and no credentials, so that did not work. So I decided to change tactics. Sometimes I'll use SMS phishing. It was in scope, so I'm going to try it. What I'll do is, typically I use SMS for bypassing multi-factor authentication. Once I already have credentials, I will say someone's trying to reset, come up with some scenario that they send me their 2FA code. What I've done is I got and tried to log in. It prompts me for the code. I get it from them, and then I put it in. This has to be a question where they're going to answer yes or no, because I can't go log in and wait 30 minutes for a reply. It needs to happen within the allotted time frame for that 2FA code. So I always come up with something that has a yes or no. One that gives them the feeling they're still in charge here, But two, I know they're actively on this looking, and I can follow up immediately. I'm using an app called Spoof Card. For phone calls, like I showed you, I can spoof my phone number. However, for text message, I just have to choose from a list. So I'm going to come with one that would seem realistic. And I send this message. This is from the card, and I'm going to send it from Google to the Security First IT people. I'm going to send it from Office. Basically, what I'm going to say is someone tried to log into your account from Berlin, Germany. Was this you? Reply yes or no. When they reply no, it was not me, I follow up with use this link to verify your account so that we'll block them. In the end, only replied, and she followed the link even, but she realized this was phishing and she didn't fall for it again. So while looking at Security First IT's website, I found this photo of Anton, and I always look in photos very closely. And as you can see, there's this brochure here, and it has a picture of Robin Robbins. Robin Robbins is a very well-known MSP sales coach. She has courses, and it looks like Anton follows her and likes her. So I'm going to see if I can send a LinkedIn message appearing to come from her. And again, that's going to create some emotion, some excitement. Robin Robbins, someone he likes. And I'm going to send this email as her. It's going to take him to that same LinkedIn authentication page. In the end, he didn't click. He didn't fall for it. So Active Recon. I have figured out from my call, acting as another company, who the gatekeeper is. I've been asked to not disclose names for Security First IT, so I'm not going to tell the name. I figured out who is the sort of sales, the initial person that sets up the calls. So she's also the executive assistant. So this is the idea I came up with. I checked with Donna and David what was in scope, what was out of scope. And we're going to use COVID. Attackers are going to use COVID. They're going to use current events. They seem more real. They create more pressure and emotion. So that's what I'm going to do. My idea is I'm going to create a form. It's not asking for any credentials, so it's more likely she'll actually fall for it, or the individual will. I'm going to create a form that the city is requiring me to turn in employee names because of a COVID tracing. This is not completely wild. Similar instances have occurred. So I can use this in a semi-realistic way. So I'm going to send this email to the gatekeeper, the executive assistant, asking them to fill out this form. And I'm going to ask for the employee names and phone numbers. And we'll see how this goes. And I got a reply. And this is actually a pretty passionate reply from her. Her feelings about this, which is great for me. Because there's feelings involved in this, now I can play on these emotions. And I'm pretty confident I can take this to fruition and actually get some information from it. So I'm going to come up with a reply to ease her fears, her concerns, and give her what she wants. And in the end, I got what I needed. I got a list of all Security First IT employees and their cell numbers. This is great. I can definitely use this. I went on to use the email addresses that I got in that to create several more phishing campaigns and scenarios to try to gain credentials and to get a foothold into the organization. However, at each point, no matter what mistakes the users might have made, if they clicked, interacted, responded, in the end, I was not able to get credentials. So while both Cardin and Security First IT have things that can be improved, have things they can button up, stopping clicks, implementing some additional policies at some of those organizations, they really did a good job stopping me as a social engineer. Both of these organizations have really focused on security awareness beyond the basics and what might be, quote, required. These organizations have worked to build a culture of security. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this engagement. Don't just train your employees what security is. Build a culture of security so that it is always top of mind, always present, and you will be able to successfully stop social engineering attacks on your own organization. Oh, and by the way, Elizabeth did a great job stopping us. She did perfect.